Hey guys, JD here with the Kawasaki Ultra 310, and today we're installing our 200 watt speaker system by PWC Brackets. Now you guys saw I did a promo video, unboxing video on these a few weeks ago, and now today I'll be installing the speakers, I'll be installing the controller, and I'll be installing our water resistant amplifier. So this speaker here is actually already installed. I wanted to do this process first just to get a hang of it myself. I'm going to actually remove the speaker and I'm going to show you the whole process of how to install each of them. To install the speaker on that side and to route our wires for the harness, we are going to loosen up the whole upper deck here. We're going to remove the glove box, and that's going to make the install a little easier. But I just wanted to give you a look at this installed speaker. So these speakers are manufactured by Recoil exclusively for PWC Brackets. PWC Brackets takes these when they get them from the factory. They install their proprietary mounting hardware. And of course, PWC Brackets offers you the best in customer service support and product installation tips that you won't get anywhere else. Please note that some steps of the installation are intentionally omitted from this video. The complete detailed video will be provided free of charge to PWC Brackets customers. So one of the first things you're going to do is there's this liner. It's inside the compartment here. It covers up the wire harness for the display. That just has these plastic push rivets holding it in. You're going to want to go ahead and pop this out and set it to the side. The 4-inch PWC Brackets speaker pods include PWC Brackets proprietary mounting system, not available anywhere else. Alright, so the most difficult part of installing these speakers is going to be drilling the holes and mounting the speakers correctly. And then the next most difficult part will be drilling the hole right here for our controller assembly, which you can actually put the controller wherever you want. It doesn't have to go right here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to line our bracket up. Now you can see I've already drilled this out, but looking at this, you want it to be parallel with the plane of the plastic piece right there. So you have your plate as a reference, you drilled your pilot holes, and then we kind of ovaled those holes out a little bit to give us a little more leeway to get those speakers mounted straight. Once you're done with that step, the next thing we did is we drilled out a hole for our wire harness assembly. All right, so now we're going to use a 10mm deep well socket just like this, and we're going to go in and we're going to tighten each of these up. We've got our bracket sandwiched up in there, and those speakers are now in place. All right, let's go to the other side. So we've got our bracket positioned here, but the next thing we got to do is remove this glove box for two reasons. One, that's going to give us access to the little conduit that's going to allow us to run the wires for our amp. And two, it's going to give us more room to get our hands in there to attach this hardware. So the first thing you got to do is remove the glove box cover. You just push it towards the back of the ski and it pops right out. Now inside that glove box, you'll see there's a little styrofoam liner. So you're going to just use your fingers to kind of pop it up. You can see that those bolt heads actually popped through it. So I'm just reaching in there and pulling it up just like that. Be careful, it is made of styrofoam. Then if you look down in there, there's two 10mm nuts. You'll need a long reach extension like this. And we're gonna go ahead and pull each of those out. All right, so you've got those two nuts off. In my case, I have the unlimited PWC immobilizer key relocation because I don't have a stock handlebar. So the next thing you're going to have to do is you'll see we have a 10mm bolt there, here, there's two right here, and then there's two more underneath this plate. So we're going to go ahead and get this plate off. There's a couple push rivets, and we're going to loosen all of these 10mm bolts. And again, that's just to get this glove box assembly out of the compartment here. So then this panel here, you're just going to use your fingers or a rivet removal tool to work it out. And you can see it comes off like that. And then you've got one here, one there. We're gonna pull those out as well. And the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna peel up this glove box seal. You will need to real seal the end with silicone. You could see it had silicone there from the factory, so you'll have to reseal that. So once that's down, you can see how this whole assembly comes up like this. Once you pull that up, the glove box assembly here, and I'm doing this with one hand, so it's easier if I... Then that glove box assembly comes out just like that. I've got my immobilizer wired in there, so that's what that wire is. Now you see this junction right here. This is where, and I've got my buzzer here too, normally you wouldn't. This is where the wires for the amp are gonna go down into the hull and then to the battery compartment. So our next step is we've placed our bracket with 1/8 of an inch between the front and 1/8 of an inch between the corner there. You'll get your bracket on the bottom there. We'll secure those in place, and the mounting will be pretty much complete. This here is for the audio connector. That is the, basically I stepped it out to the right size to get that wire through. And there you go, speaker seated. We're gonna go ahead and get that bracket on. So now before we put the glove box back in place, we're gonna get our amplifier and our audio controller in place. So the amplifier we are going to mount right up in the front of the ski, right there. And then our wires to the battery, we're gonna run right through this conduit right there. So here is my recoil waterproof amp. I'm gonna mount this right here like this. You can see that there are 3 holes on each side. The third one kind of sticks out a little farther, so I'm gonna use the first 2, and I'm gonna use 4 screws in total. And we're gonna mount that right there in the compartment just like that. Then we'll go around to the other side and we'll route the wire harness, which is gonna go down to the battery. And then this connector here is gonna be connected to your audio controller. And we'll clean this all up and zip tie everything once we're done. We'll vacuum up all these plastic shavings from just from drilling out our holes. But for now, we're gonna get the amplifier in place and mount that with the included hardware. The full version of this video, provided to PWC Brackets customers, guides you on how to adjust this amp for best results on the Kawasaki Ultra 310 platform. Once you've made the appropriate adjustments to your amp, make sure to use the included Allen key to tighten all these Allens back in place. So I just want to show you, I've got a small Milwaukee M12 driver here, and I will be using that to install my screws to hold my amp in place. It is very important to make sure that that amp is properly secured. Your ski will be bashing around, you don't want it loose. So I'm going to add a second screw on this side and then 2 more on the other side. That'll be nice and secure right there. All right, so we've got our amplifier assembly tightened in place. It's not going anywhere. And so now it's time to route our wire harness. So these do have to be installed directly to the battery. These do have a 40 amp fuse, and they're like 10 gauge wires, pretty substantial wires for this amp. You don't want to use the fitting that was provided for the stock stereo system, nor do you want to use, there's a little pigtail right here for the OEM cigarette plug. You don't want to use that. You want to run this right to the battery. So this conduit here, it's an open plastic part. We're just going to go and feed these down there just like that. Real simple. And we might not need all this wire. We can go ahead and cut the extra away. Here is your fuse assembly for that stereo. And we're just feeding this right now into the ski. I'll show you in a minute. We're gonna go around to the front compartment and I'm gonna show you how to access this wire and pull it through into the battery compartment without having to do any other modifications or drilling to the ski. Really, the only drilling you have to do here was to install the speakers and then obviously to mount the amp in place. All right, so we'll pull the rest of that through. Let's go around to the front compartment. I'll show you how to disconnect the panel that separates the compartment from the rest of the ski, and we'll go ahead and pull this wire harness through to the battery. All right, so we've got that back panel removed there. You can see into the ski now. And so you can see here's our wire harness that we pulled through. Now we got to get it into the battery compartment. So the same way you took that back panel off, you're going to take this battery door off. You just kind of get your fingers under one of the lips and pull up, and those rivets will pop right out. There is your battery right there. So you can see on the left of the compartment, that's where we want to feed our wires right here through. So to do that, we're going to have to pop this side ECU panel off as well. All right, so you could see that I've started feeding that neon green weed eater string through the little port right there. So you want to make sure to push that all the way through, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to stick my hand down in here, grab the other end of that, and pull it through, and then I'm going to feed it forwards, and that will allow me to reach my hand in here and then grab it. And you can see here's our wires from the amplifier harness. I'm then just going to tie off this here with a zip tie, and then pull the rest of those wires right through right here. Then we're going to install new terminals on this and connect these right to the battery. So you can see now we've got that line through the battery compartment into the side compartment here. This is where our ECU is located. We just popped this panel off. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull this through as much as we can, and then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to find the end of this, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to reach in as far as I can, and I'm going to feed this until it comes around. All right, so you can see there our feeder wire starts down by the battery bay and then comes out right there. Again, you're going to feed it through the side compartment and then just feed it around there. All right, so here's our harness wires from the amplifier, and then you can see we've just got this taped with this piece of weed whacker string. So we're going to go ahead now and we're going to pull that string through into our battery compartment, and that's going to pull all this extra slack out. And you keep pulling there, and there you go. All right, so you can see we've got our harness wires pulled through here. There is a little fuse block, and that's right here. So you want to make sure that stays in the compartment right there. So this extra wire here, we're going to bundle up and zip tie off. And then we're going to zip tie this little fuse block. We're going to just zip tie it right here to these other wires so we know exactly where it is. Then we're going to install these marine grade terminals, shrink wrap, and our amp will be wired. Okay, so we've got our ECU door back in place. We've got those push rivets back in. You can see there is our amplifier wires. We've got new terminals shrink wrapped in place. And now we're just going to remove these two factory terminals off the battery and install those directly to our battery. These wires are clearly labeled. You see we've got our ground wire and our positive wire. We've got those both connected securely. We've got everything zip tied in place. And now we're going to go ahead and reinstall our battery door. So now that we've got everything installed, we've got our amp all installed, we've got our speakers all installed. Now I'm going through and cleaning up all these wires. All right, so you guys can see that we cut the hole here for our control panel. We did that using a 70mm hole saw. So now that that hole is cut, I just went through with a razor blade here and cleaned it up just a little bit. This insert is going to go in there. So your insert's going to go in right like this. You might need to clean up that hole just a little bit, but that's going to press in right like that. And then we're going to go ahead and get our controller in place. Okay, so here's the bezel for the audio controller. We've got that hole drilled. We've got it test fit in the outer bezel here. Now this panel, mine was a little bit worn. This panel is only about $25, so if you wanted to buy a brand new one, I probably will buy a brand new one within the next year or so, just because this one's got some scuffs on it, but it's fine for now. This hole we drilled right here, just went through and cleaned it up a little bit, deburred it a little bit, and then before we could put that outer panel back on, we got to get all this hardware back in place. So we drilled our hole right here. We drilled our hole through the outer fairing, and we've got this controller secured in place. We've got our wires connected. We've got that connector all connected up at our amp. These wires from the controller, we're gonna zip tie, get those all neat, I have my buzzer here because my immobilizer has been relocated to my glove box compartment, which is right here. Most people won't have that relocated there. This is now going to go back in place like this. You can see we've got those wires cleaned up and zip tied. We're going to clean up all those plastic shavings from when we drilled out our speakers. So next we're going to get our glove box back in place. When this plastic is all loose, you just line that up and push that back down, and then you're going to reattach your glove box seal right here, just like that. All right, so now we're just going through and tightening all of this hardware that secures the plastic sub assembly in place. Remember not to tighten these too much because they are in plastic. So you just want to tighten them so that everything's secured, but you don't want to over tighten. So when you're putting this panel back in place, make sure to put the top part in first over the knob. And then you're going to push this part down. There's tabs at the bottom that lock in on either side. Then make sure to push on your controller and make sure that that's seated through the hole as well. Now we're just going to reinstall our plastic push rivets. And once we've got those two 10mm nuts at the bottom there, we've got our insulator back in place. And we're going to get our glove box door back in place. So our next step is going to be to install this waterproof breaker in the ski. Now this is an ignition protected waterproof breaker, and it will allow you to basically shut off the power to the amplifier. So any digital device, including this amplifier, does have a parasitic draw on your battery. So over time, if the ski is stored, it could cause your battery to be depleted. So putting a breaker like this on, as long as you trigger it, will prevent your battery from being discharged. So there's our number 10 terminals. Those are crimped and shrink wrapped. And here's our breaker, and you can see I've attached that load terminal right there. They haven't been tightened yet. And then once we figure out where that's going to go, we're going to go ahead, drill some pilot holes and attach our screws. I am going to mount this in the compartment right like that, and then we'll feed our extra wire back into the ski. All right guys, we got our PWC bracket speaker system completely installed here. I just want to give you a quick look at everything here. Those grills on the speaker are polished stainless steel, 316 stainless, so they should withstand a saltwater environment. The same with these right here. Here's your controller. It has a very OEM clean install look. Actually, this is very similar to the controller that's on the STX models, and I actually like this better right here than the stock one, which goes right there. This one is, you can see it lights up when it's paired to your phone. I also want to show you, so I've got all my stuff back in the compartment. The amp has a light on it that indicates that it's on. So for example, if I shut it off, you'll see that that light will go right off. Well, the system looks great. Let's see how it sounds. We're gonna get this out on the water, and I'm gonna give you my full review.
Make sure to check out my full review and testing video of the PWC Brackets 4-inch 200-watt stereo system for the Kawasaki Ultra 310s and Ultra 160, only on JD's Waterworld.